Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch. It's always dangerous presenting after lunch because everyone seems to go to sleep after it, so I'll try and keep you awake. I'd like to thank Santa Monica Networks for inviting us along to speak this afternoon. Just a little bit about Exclusive Networks. We're a trade-only distributor organisation. We've been going since about 2006, specialising in security and network infrastructure. We're in around 21 countries now, so quite large, and we're supporting obviously our Finland region and our Baltics today and tomorrow. What I wanted to talk to you about this afternoon was something called CARM, which is cyber attack, remediation, and mitigation. I kind of got fed up in our own organisation of the marketing department talking about security and infrastructure solutions when really it was kind of a technical sale, and customers need to understand the technical capability and understand the value of those solutions, not just hear the marketing fluff, as I like to call it. So with CARM, I basically put together an initiative that demonstrated the tangible benefits of multiple solutions working together to provide our customers more value. So really, 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of a solution and proposition. And when we're talking about cyber attack, remediation, and mitigation, we're always looking at the triangle, and hopefully some of you are familiar with this. The areas of defense, identification, and actually then remediation and forensics, and then learning from your mistakes, and then reinforcing your defense again. So I hate to mention it, but the B word, the breach word, what we focused on is everyone is susceptible to breach. If we look over the last 12 months, you'll see some big names in here, and I'm sure most of the vendors this morning have touched on some of these. Now, these are very large organisations. Some of you may be this large. Most of you probably aren't. The challenge being is that these companies have got vast security budgets and lots of people to run their security teams. JP Morgan, after their last breach, said that they've got 1,000 people on security and a £250 million security budget. I'm not sure how many of you in this room have got that, but they still got breached. Okay? So it's up to us in this room to put the best solutions together we can in terms of providing as much friction as we can in stopping the bad guys getting into our network. We think it's inevitable, no matter what you put in, but you need to make it as hard as you can for those guys to get into your network and environment. And one thing that we're not doing very well is learning from our mistakes. How many of you saw the latest Home Depot breach? Not many? Okay. So Home Depot is a DIY shop. They sell paint and paper and hammers. And they just got breached in the States, and they let go of 56 million users' credit cards in the US. Okay, so that's 1 in 6 of the US population. The security guys and the technical people within Home Depot knew what they had to fix because they learnt from the Target breach, which affected probably 1 in 3 Americans. But they hadn't done a very good job in educating the senior management. And I'm sure some of you in this room will also have experienced that. You know what you need to do, but it's really hard to get your senior management to buy into it. When the technical people went to talk to the senior management responded with, "Why should we care? We sell hammers." Okay? They had 56 million credit cards stolen from their organisation, and the management kind of swept under the carpet because they just thought they were a DIY shop and sold hammers. And it continues. Some people have alluded this morning to vulnerabilities. We look at the SSL vulnerability in Heartbleed, the recent bash vulnerabilities that are in Unix platforms that we think will affect hundreds of thousands of devices. It's our jobs to go and identify those vulnerabilities, patch them quickly, but to also keep on proactively looking at our infrastructure to make sure that we're covering all the vulnerabilities that we can. And the reason we've got the question marks is because it really is an unknown. We know that we're going to see more vulnerabilities in our infrastructure. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of lines of code in Linux and Windows. There's going to be a lot more of these to come, and we just need to be ready for them. So what is CARM? So CARM is a reference architecture. It's a solution with post-breach capabilities, and it's been designed to be able to help you defend against your network. You'll be hearing from, I'm sure you've heard from me, the Palo Altos this morning, Palo Alto Networks this morning or this afternoon. It's all about defense and creating as much friction as possible. But it's also about visibility and control. When exclusive networks are looking for products for their portfolio, the two things that we always look for are visibility and control. Because if you can't see it, you can't control it. The other thing that we're looking to do is contain the threat, provide full forensics, and speed up the response in order to fix something. I'll go over some statistics a bit later that shows you the problem in terms of rapid response that it is today. Most of us, probably in this room, are playing what we call whack-a-mole, which is a game where we flatten PCs. If we see a problem, wipe the PC. That's the safest thing to do and the quickest thing to do. It's not necessarily always the best thing to do. And what we've done is combined these best-of-breed vendors so they work together and share the intelligence. And the key thing for me, having a technical background, is that we can actually demonstrate this working together. A lot of vendors will claim to have alliances or partnerships. What that normally means is the executives' sons play baseball together on a Sunday. It doesn't actually mean that their technical solutions work together. So what are the benefits of CARM? Improves visibility. We want more intelligence. We need to know who is behind the attacks. We need to know the tools that they're using. We need to know how they're getting into the network. And we want to minimize the damage to the organization. The first thing your CEO or CFO is going to say is, what's left my network? What's the damage? You need the tools, but also, probably just as importantly, you need the process in place to be able to understand what's happened in the organization, to go back to the business. So, organizational damage, loss of intellectual property, brand, reputation, loss of revenue. The other thing that I'm sure you all share in this room is a lack of resource. Okay? Not many people will put their hand up and say, yeah, I've got too many people looking after security. There's normally one or two that are having to do absolutely everything. So what we need to do is optimize the resource that we've got in our organization to be able to respond to the threat. Everyone wants to reduce IT costs, and we need this faster find-to-fix time. When the bad guys get in your network, we need to be able to identify it, find it, but more importantly, fix it, remediate, learn from our mistakes, and move on. So I think we probably all in this room know why we need better solutions. In the US, 63,000 known IT security incidents in 2013. Average cost of a data leak, 5.5 million. And it goes on. I think what we also have to be careful of is that we don't desensitize the size of these breaches. 56 million credit cards is a lot of credit cards. But what we're also seeing is these threats are actually coming down into smaller businesses. And we've probably jointly got more of an education job to do on those medium enterprises. The large enterprises understand the problem and the scale. The medium businesses still need some more education to explain what the problem is, what the cost is going to be. And the problem's growing. So I saw BYOD in the corridor. We always see BYOD. We always see cloud. We always see mobility. These things are increasing the attack surface of our networks. Everyone jumped on BYOD because they wanted to send their users home using their own devices. Wouldn't that be great? I'm not sure about what it's like in the Baltics, but certainly in the UK, people are starting to think a little bit twice about that now that they've seen some threats. I think there's more mobile devices in the world now than there are people. With more mobile devices and greater bandwidth from those mobile devices, it's the perfect storm for probably the biggest, most powerful botnet in the world. And it will probably come. And it'll probably come. So, number of devices increasing. BYOD is on the rise. Mobility. Everyone's seen the sales figures for the latest Apple iPhone 6, selling 9 million devices over 3 days. Absolutely crazy figures. And the cloud. Everyone's now starting to see the benefits of the cloud. We don't want to manage all that infrastructure in our own network. Let somebody else do it. Put it in a big data center that knows how to run this stuff and can do it more cheaply than we can. They've got the economies of scale. And then applications. I'm not sure if you've seen recently, obviously the protesting that's going on in Hong Kong at the moment. Everyone seen that? Okay. So there was over social media, there were some messages sent to the protesters saying, download this application, it'll help you organise your event, your protest better. It was an application called Code for HK. What those protesters didn't realise that actually that was the Chinese government launching an application which tracked and traced everything that happened on those mobile phones that it was downloaded to. So now suddenly the Chinese government know all your protesters, they know their movements, they know their telephone calls, their SMS, they know their location. And that's quite a high-profile case. But my children download games every day on their devices. Fruit Ninja, I think, is one of their favourite ones. I found out last week from some cyber intelligence from FireEye that Fruit Ninja's got backdoor code in it, which allows you to execute at root level. Again, that means that device that my children are using is now owned. Okay, it doesn't feel too good, even as a parent, let alone as an enterprise. And the attacks are getting more clever. Everyone's heard of APTs. It's kind of a bit of a buzzword, but it's just kind of the latest generation of malware. But the actors behind it are more persistent. They are targeting an individual for intellectual property, for credit cards, for intelligence, and they will keep going until they get through. Those organisations have huge budgets. They don't have any time constraints. They don't have software release issues. They don't have change control. They can keep on going until they get through, and that's what we're up against. We're dealing with commercial technical solutions where we have all this governance and control. These guys that are trying to get into your network are changing stuff all the time, and they will get in. Zero-day exploits, stuff that we've never seen in the wild before, and polymorphic threats, a big word for basically saying that the attacks are changing all the time in order to get into your network. So we think, again, it's inevitable that some of these threats will become successful attacks. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen this. In 2009, the US government basically said that their fighter technology was 16 years ahead of the Chinese government's technology. Everyone see this or not? Nope. So the interesting thing is that in 2012, just 3 years later, China came out with the Chengdu J20. Okay, anyone spot the difference? Yeah, it was cheaper, a lot cheaper. So we think, this would have cost billions of dollars to invest in. Not only is there the cost of, the actual capital cost of investment that the US spent in developing this aircraft, but also the significant advantage it would give China if the nation states were to go to war. Okay, so this is at nation-to-nation state level. Incidentally, this isn't just, it looks like a bit of an Airfix model. It's not just a model. To keep one of these fighters up in the air takes a lot of technology. The Chinese must have got right into their networks to lift all of this intellectual property out of the US government's networks. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the breaches out there, but this was also obviously associated with one of the Lockheed Martin breaches. And we're seeing the threats commoditizing. So we've got nation-to-nation and cyber warfare. There were people talking about Stuxnet with the Iranian nuclear plant that was not so long ago. We're talking about hacktivism with the likes of the Chinese and, Hong Kong and the anonymous groups. But we can't forget the small guys. We've heard of incidents where the local pizza shops are doing denial of service on their online presence of their competition. You know, if those guys can't place orders on pizza next door, they're going to place orders with the guy next to them. Okay? We've also seen, I'm not sure if you've been in all the presentations this morning, but the cost of this is commoditizing as well. There's a black market to buy the tools. There's a black market to buy the credit cards. There's a black market for denial of service. For $50, you can do a denial of service for 24/7 and get an SLA associated with it. Okay? The cost of attack has dramatically got less, which is a problem for us. Ultimately, it's us that are going to get breached. And some interesting facts and statistics. My biggest shoot down at a presentation was somebody in the audience said that 75% of statistics are incorrect. But I still share them. When there was a breach, 100% of the victims already had up-to-date antivirus. So we know that antivirus software isn't working on its own anymore. People are still a bit scared to take it off, and quite rightly. There's a lot of old attacks out there that the AV can still protect you against. The other thing is that 67% of the breaches were notified by a third party to the organisation that was breached. I know of UK information providers that were basically given a call by the FBI saying you've got owned servers in your environment. And that's not a nice call to take. 100% of the breaches involved compromised credentials. So this is where either credentials were the target of the attack, or the credentials were a target in order to escalate that attack within that customer's or organisation's network. But every time, the credentials are like the crown jewels that the bad guys are trying to get. And this is probably one of the most scary. The average number of days that the bad guys are in someone's network before they're found is 230. Okay? It's getting better. This was 420 the year before. Okay? So this is one of the things that we need to address. The credentials is probably another simple thing we need to address. People still aren't doing the basics. Are they encrypting their data? Are they rotating their passwords? Have they got clean DNS so your DNS resolution doesn't go out to the bad guys? Just basic things that people need to address. In 2013, 8 breaches alone exposed 1 million identities. Okay, huge numbers, huge numbers. And then this one, which I think is probably also very interesting, 46% of the machines that are in a network that was breached didn't have malware on it. So security companies are very keen to go, oh yeah, it's malware, it's really bad. But the bad guys don't always need malware to be able to infiltrate your network and extract data. Normally, they might need a little bit of malware just to get in the network. They drop a payload, a backdoor. They steal some credentials, which is probably their first port of call. Then, if they've got the credentials, they don't need malware. They can just wander around the inside of your network doing what they like. And that's why 46% of the machines that were actually breached didn't have malware, but somebody got on them with login credentials. So your chances of attack is, as a medium business, is starting to increase. First of all, it was all about the large organisations. Everyone wanted to attack the large organisations. They've got most to lose. Once everyone's been around the large organisations, and the large organisations then start to spend some money, so the cost of attack increases because the defences have got better in those large organisations, we then start to see more medium business being hit. Okay? So it's our jobs again to educate that medium section of business, our organisations, in helping them defend against it. So what is the cost? So we've got tangible costs, loss of revenue, outage, not being able to trade. A classic one is denial of service. We've seen, going back a few years now, the gambling organisations. If there was a big gambling event on, so Super Bowl or horse racing or rugby or football, if it's a big event where the gambling companies stand to make a lot of money, we saw hackers basically going in with a ransom letter saying, either you pay up or we denial of service your infrastructure. And most of those organisations at that time were just paying to take the problem away. Loss of data, interruption to business, and of course legal costs. In the intangible, customer reputation, damage to customer confidence. You saw with the Sony PlayStation network, a lot of people backed off from that for quite some time. One thing I would like to mention here is that probably what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Does that translate over here? Which basically means if you are attacked, you're probably a good organisation to work with afterwards because that organisation has hopefully spent a lot more money on defences and security. And loss of intellectual property. Classic example of this was the jet fighter. We've also heard stories about aircraft engines being designed and then the intellectual property being stolen before that's actually been commercially released. So what are the customer pain points? What are your pain points? And hopefully we've captured some of them. A lack of visibility. Do you know everything that's going on in the network? If you do know everything that's going on in the network, or you've got the systems to give you that, there's a good chance you haven't got enough people to look at all those events. It's an absolute minefield. And do you have an incident response process? I liken this to a fire drill. If there was a fire in this hotel, everyone would know to follow the fire exit, to meet outside and tick the register. How many organisations have got a breach process? Do I get a show of hands? So, has anyone got a breach process? No one's going to admit it. Basically, if you get a breach and you haven't got the tools in place to give you the information, when you push the big red button to get the experts in, they're not going to have the tools to be able to respond or find out what's actually left your building. So it's a good exercise to think about what your process would be if you got breached. What tools do I need in place? What process do I need in place? What education do I need in place? It's good to go through that exercise. Why did it happen? If you haven't got the tools, you won't be able to provide the forensics. You won't be able to tell the CEO or the CFO what happened in your network. And then we can see an escalation in costs. People buying more and more solutions, but maybe not having the resource. So we need to automate as much of this as we can. We need a plan B. So what's needed? A cyber attack early warning. This is where marketing did influence my slides a little bit. We need a single pane of glass. It'll be useful if we can see what's going on in the network through one view. And we need rapid defense reconfiguration. What do I mean by that? As an organization, you may have bought 10, 20, 100 Cisco routers, Cisco switches, Juniper routers. You've already spent a lot of money on infrastructure. If I come into your organization and say you want this latest and greatest security solution, it would make a lot more sense to you, where you've already got that investment in your infrastructure, that you can use the intelligence from that infrastructure to go and maybe send some commands to your Ciscos or your Junipers to, again, maybe send some firewall rules or ACLs to those devices to reduce your attack surface. So actually, you're leveraging your existing investment, so you're getting more value from this new shiny security solution that you've just purchased. Better visibility, actionable intelligence. If I find something bad, I want to be able to use it. I don't, there's too many people out there staring at SIM-SEMs for compliance reasons to tick the box that aren't actually using the data. You need to use the data. And again, we need to learn from our lessons, unlike Home Depot. So what have we got? Cyber attack, remediation, and mitigation. And it's all about the triangle. Defense, the reaction, detection, and then learning from our mistakes. We have signature-less defense. We all know that signatures are kind of dead. We still need some of them for the old malware. But when we're talking about zero-day attacks, we need signature-less defense. We need shared threat intelligence. I'm not sure if you've seen, but the likes of Palo Alto Networks, the likes of Fortinet, are all starting to come together to form alliances where they're sharing intel. You need to do that. To stand a chance in winning against the bad guys, we need to come together and share that intelligence. We also need to look at the insider threat as well as outside-in protection. What's going on the soft core of our network? We always talk about the bad guys coming in. Well, what's happening with that user, that disgruntled user who may be leaving the business, the Snowden effect, someone bad inside the organization taking data that they shouldn't. We need to look at access controls. We need to make sure those people inside the organization only get access to the data that they're supposed to get access to. Virtual execution, if we look at solutions like Palo Alto Networks, Wildfire or FireEye, the ability to detonate files or websites or emails to basically understand what they would do if they come into the network and hit a user. It's pretty much one of the only ways that we can do zero-day detection. Validation. Many of you have got gateway solutions. What happens when those users are off network? Or what happens if my gateway solution says that a user has been infected? How do we know that user's been infected? And I'll come on to how we can help with that in a moment. And then we need to automate the response. We've already identified that we haven't got enough resource in the organization to be able to respond to all these threats. So we deliver real-time monitoring. We've got big data analysis for some of the abnormalities, fast incident evaluation and qualification, faster response, better control, and the ability to automatically reconfigure devices. So what we've built is basically a reference architecture. And this is just one example. We've got examples with other solutions, like Fortinet, with F5. This is just one example. So if we look at this, we've got Palo Alto Next Generation Firewall. We may have an endpoint solution that's different. We've got FireEye doing zero-day detonation of maybe emails, or maybe it's trawling the file storage system to see if there's any bad malware sitting on your storage solution. We've got an endpoint solution down here. And what we can do is, because this has all got now REST APIs and they can all communicate together, we can get more value out of this proposition by using the solutions together. So an example might be, we see a file coming through our Palo Alto firewall. We flag that up to our FireEye solution. our FireEye solution detonates that file and finds that it is bad. Okay? It also says that my gateway solution says that this PC is bad. How do I know it's bad? It might be a false positive. You sometimes get false positives. The vendors often don't like to say you get false positives, but you do get some false positives. There's two scenarios there. One is that it has got malware on it, which makes it easy for me to say, yep, it's bad. I'm now going to take remedial actions. I might go to that machine and it's got nothing on it. It's got no malware on it. Now, there's a challenge there. Has it got no malware on it, or has the malware been on it and then cleaned up after itself? Because if the malware is cleaned up after itself, that's a bigger problem, because my forensics guys have gone to that machine, it looks clean, and I've walked away, but the breach is still going on behind me. What I probably need is an endpoint solution to validate that something has actually happened on that endpoint. So my gateway solution says, yes, that endpoint is bad. I now correlate that information from my endpoint and say, yes, it's definitely bad. I've definitely seen those indicators of compromise that were seen at the gateway, and I've seen those indicators of compromise now at the endpoint. So I've now got two solutions confirming that I've got a problem. Okay? I can send that information to my SIM-SEM solution. It might be Logarithm, it might be ArcSight, it might be RSA Envision. But I've got two technologies telling me that I've definitely got a problem. What I might also see is bad IP addresses or bad domains being looked up through my DNS solution. Again, this information can be passed up to my SIM-SEM. So the SIM-SEM has now got 3 reference points. The gateway said there's a problem, the endpoint said there's a problem, and my DNS has said there's a problem. What I can add to that is more context. So hopefully, I'm just going to check the time because I can go on. I've also got direct access to my identity store. So I can access my LDAP or my Active Directory and find out the name of the user and their role in the business. So I look up this machine because I know he's bad, because 3 solutions have told me. I now know that it's the receptionist machine, okay? I can probably take her off the network and block access for her without any repercussions. Maybe I get my SIM-SEM with its REST API to talk to my Imperva database security solution, or maybe my F5 WAF via iRules or via a REST API to say block all access to my crown jewels. This machine might be the managing director's machine. It might be the owner of the business. To block access for him might be a career-limiting choice. Okay? So what I might do instead is say, right, I know it's the MD. I think he's definitely got a problem with his PC. I'm going to put a rule into my database or my WAF to say, restrict access, but monitor everything they do. I can then get a bit of evidence to then go and cut him off the network. So what we get, and if there's a Cisco person in the room, I apologize, but in the 80s, they had something called self-defending networks. Does everyone remember that? Self-defending networks was the ability to the network to mold around the network, and if there was an incident, be able to protect. That wasn't so easy in those days because you didn't have this interaction or this openness through the APIs that the solutions could talk to each other. What we can now do, because we have these APIs and the context, if we can get all these solutions to talk, we can start to automate remediation and control a lot easier and with a lot more confidence than we used to. I'm not saying you're going to let it do it itself, because a lot of people still won't do that. A lot of people still want to do right mouse click, approve, and then roll out some changes. But it does mean we can get closer to a fully automated response. So what that comes back to is that reducing that find to fix time. Find the problem, fix it as quickly as we can. We've got examples with videos and in our labs that if we see something bad coming in, we can pretty much isolate, take that machine off the network, or put rules into another solution in seconds, minutes, rather than days, months, years. So I guess the last thing on there is this is our idea of a working reference architecture. We understand that you won't have all these technologies, but really what we're trying to do is just educate to say, start to try and get them to work together. We've proven that these work together, but I'm sure there's enough intelligence in the room that if you've got different solutions, you can start to glue yours together too. So in summary, the post-breach era is on us. It's if, not when, which is definitely one to take to your board. The organisation needs to address it. It's currently seen as costly and complex, but it doesn't need to be. And CARM kind of simplifies that and helps provide a more rapid outcome, a quicker fix. And we've got this working as a real-life lab environment, so if you wanted to see it, we can organise that for you. So my last slide is based. I know there's been a lot of fear, uncertainty and doubt, and you'll see a lot of that today, but what we'd like to say is keep calm and carry on.